The story starts with a guy named James who is talking to someone on the phone. There is another girl who is watching another guy. Actually, this girl's name is Yoonju. The guy she was following a little later bumps into a girl, and his newspaper disappears. Yoonju doesn't understand. A little later, when James gets off the train, he bumps into Yoonju, but after that, the three of them go their separate ways. But Yoonju follows the man to a restaurant. Meanwhile, we see a fat guy named Max in a shop. A little later James came up on a roof, and he began to watch over someone. He was also giving commands to someone on the phone. Actually, James planted a bomb in a car inside the bank. And when the bomb exploded, the entire building caught fire. Firefighters had to come soon to put out the fire, and some robbers entered the bank with these firefighters, and they take everyone hostage at the bank, steal the money, and try to escape, but James can see the police coming outside. So he calls Max and tells him to face the police, so Max takes his car, and pulls up in front of the police car, and Max crashes the cops and runs away in the other direction, and then we realize that they're all part of the same gang, and they're robbing different banks. Meanwhile, the old man in the restaurant is suspicious of Yoonju, so he approaches her and asks her, "What's your problem? Why are you following me?" But Yoonju tries to tell him that it's a coincidence, but as she leaves, this guy takes her hand and sits her down again, and asking her, "What I did with the newspaper, and when I bumped into that woman on the train," and Yoonju also gives him all the answers, because she remembers everything. But she can't remember what the old man did with the newspaper, and after hearing this, the old man tells her that, "You have disappointed me, I expected better." Then he leaves her with a paper, and when Yoonju scratches the paper, he can see that it says, "You are selected," which means we understand it was a detective test. Later in the night all the thieves go to a seashore. A thief comes here and starts saying, "We did this theft, our risk was high, so why should we give money to James?" We don't give money to James, but everyone here is shocked after hearing this. But then here comes James, and beats up this thief, takes his share of the money and leaves. Then with all this money James comes to a cobbler. This cobbler is actually James' mentor, and he teaches James the thefts he learned, and he was a terrible thief when he was young, but now that he's old he can't steal anymore, so he holds James' passport hostage, makes him do these things, and now he sends him on a big mission. Meanwhile we see the old man, whom we met earlier in the story. He's actually a big detective named Chief Wong, and when Yoonju comes to meet him, he introduces her to his entire team. We know that he's divided his massive force into several divisions, and after that they set out on their new mission. Actually, the guy named Max was seen on the CCTV, so they go out to catch him, but when they get to the location, the chief won't let Yoonju out of the car, but when Yoonju makes a lot of requests, he is allowed to go to the washroom, and while in the washroom, Yoonju starts talking to herself, but she forgets to turn off her wireless. That's why everyone can hear her talk, and everyone starts making fun of her. Later that night, James and his entire team try to escape with another heist, but then James sees someone clicking his photo from another building, so James gets very angry and goes there, and kills the photographer. Meanwhile Yoonju is attacked by some thugs, so she starts fighting them too, but just as the thugs are about to kill her, the chief comes in and saves her life. Meanwhile, James comes to the old man with all the money, and he gives him all the money, and asks for his passport. But the old man does not give him his passport, but makes him do one more thing. But James avoids him and gets out, but when he gets into the car, a serial killer tries to kill him from behind, but James somehow saves himself and came to the old man with great anger, and he tells him, "This is the last time, after that I can't do anything for you, and if you don't give me my passport after this, I will kill you too." But this old man is not afraid, instead he starts laughing. After that the chief and his entire team spend 17 days investigating them at the place of theft, but even after these 17 days, they cannot collect any information. But then Yoonju has an idea. She brings a map to the chief, and she tells him that, "We saw Max in all the places where the thefts were committed, but we know where a thief steals once, he doesn't go there a second time, because then there's a chance of getting caught. And since they've stolen everywhere in town, that means only the middle of town is left, which means they'll steal there now." And after hearing this, Chief was impressed, and made her join his team, and gave her permission to go out and investigate. After they all arrive in the middle of town, and start making preparations to investigate, Chief gives Yoonju a bag containing some clothes, and when Yoonju sees a man, she alerts her team. And they realize from the CCTV footage that this man is Max, so the chief orders her to change her dress to follow Max, and Yoonju does the same. She changes her dress and starts following Max, and Max goes to a store to do some shopping, and as he tries to leave, one of their team members, named Squirrel, walks in front of Max, and takes a good look at him. However, when Max gets in the elevator to go to his room, Yoonju is already waiting for him in the elevator, and when the elevator goes up, Yoonju drops her coins, and pretends to pick them up, and sees Max's room number. And when Yoonju tells her team members the room number, one of them comes and installs a CCTV camera in front of Max's room, so they can monitor him. But a few days later, when a garbage bag is dropped in front of his room, Yoonju quickly collects it, and when she checks it carefully, she finds a puzzle here. Actually, they find some numbers in some papers. It looked like a puzzle that had been played wrong, and maybe even a secret language, so Yoonju takes a closer look and tries to find out what the puzzle says. The next morning the chief brings all his men to the place where the photographer was killed. After a long investigation he realizes that there is a man of the robbers on the roof of another building, who commands everyone through the phone. Meanwhile, after much trouble they solve the puzzle. They can see that the answer to this puzzle is the IP address of the stock market in the city, which means the thieves will rob the stock market next. So they quickly send a camera into the burglar's room to check what they're meeting about, and when they try to leave after the meeting, a detective starts following them, but she can also see James on the street, but since she doesn't know James, so she ignores him and walks away. James then came to the roof of the building in front of Stock Market, and while he was looking around, he could see the police here, so he called his men and told them that, "We can't steal now because there are police around here, run away quickly," and when he tries to escape, he realizes that the police are coming upstairs to arrest him, so he escapes at the last moment by breaking the window. Meanwhile, there is a fierce race between thief and police, but finally the accident takes place, where all the thieves die. Meanwhile, Chief and Yoonju arrive to catch James, but since there are so many people here, it's hard for them to find him, because they still can't get a good look at James. So Chief calls his agency and tells them to call James, because they've been tracking James' number through satellite. Now if they call James, and if James receives the call, they'll figure out the guy. But when he gets a call from the agency, James and 3 others start talking on the phone, making it harder to figure out which one is the real James. But soon James realizes it's a trap. For this he quickly cuts the call, and tries to pretend to talk and leave, but when Chief can see him, he gets suspicious, because he saw him in the share market area, and now here too, so he starts following him. But when James tries to run away, a detective disguised as a traffic cop asks him for ID proof, while Yoonju watches from afar, and she can see that James escaped by stabbing the detective in his neck, so they rush him to the hospital, but he can't be saved, because the injury is so bad. James on the other hand, approaches the cobbler again, and after killing him as well, rushes out with his passport. A few days later, when Yoonju is sitting in her room thinking, she remembers that she bumped into a guy on the subway that day, who looks almost like James, and she also sees a shopping mall leaflet in his hand, which means she realizes that he's probably a regular customer at the shopping mall, and since it's Sunday, he must go there. So Yoonju quickly heads to the market, calls Chief and tells him all about it, and then she started following around the market. Here she also sees a guy like James, who has gone into a market, so she follows him there. But when James comes in front of her and asks her, "Why are you following me?" Yoonju then goes to say something. But then Chief walks in, and James runs away after seeing him. But then she realizes that James has stolen the knife from here, so she is completely shocked, because Chief follows him to catch him, and when she comes to save Chief, she then sees James already leaving after stabbing him. And when she tries to take Chief to the hospital, Chief tells her to follow James, so she follows order. But since it was raining a lot and everyone had their umbrellas open, James couldn't be found. But when the rain stopped a little later, she found him. Meanwhile, when people in the market saw the Chief injured, they rushed him to the hospital. Then they all start following Yoonju through the satellite. Actually they were following the direction Yoonju was going, but after a while they realize that the satellite signal is dead, so they are completely shocked, because they don't know what to do now. Chief tries to figure out which part of the city has no satellite signal yet, and finally he realizes that, there is an underground railway station in the city, which has no satellite signal yet, which means they realize that, Yoonju has gone there, so Chief starts running to save Yoonju. And when Yoonju is standing alone at this station, James comes in front of her, and when he goes to shoot her, some agency police come here, and they take James to the gunpoint. Yoonju also manages to free herself from James, and when James realizes that, he can't live anymore, he jumps to the other side of the train, to try to save himself, but as he is about to flee, Chief approaches him, and he shoots him several times in the chest, finally avenging the death of his men. A few days later at their colleague's funeral, they are all very upset, but the scene shifts to a few years ahead, where Yoonju bumps into a guy at the airport, and calls Chief to say, yes, this is the guy, but who is this guy? Actually this guy is James' friend. Now they're following him, and at such a point, this whole movie ends here.